Good work! At this point, you've made your first preference and read it into the app. Now, I did take you through the shortest path to get something working and appearing on the screen. Why don't we now try to clean up the code with some best practices? The first thing is that we should have been using string resources from the strings.xml file for all of our preferences. So in our strings.xml file, I'll add those two new strings, one for the key and one for the title. Notice that I've set the translatable to false for the key string, because if I ever do localize my app, I don't need to waste the translator's time translating keys that are never even visible to the user. Also, I don't want changing the language to affect what name the keys are saved under. Next, I'll go into our preference visualizer XML and start using those strings. I'll do that by just replacing the hard-coded strings with the ones that we've created in our strings resources. Now let's do the same for the summary off and on. The first thing is we just add them to the strings resources, and then we can replace those hard-coded values to the string resource values. And finally, make sure that you use the string resource for whenever you refer to this key, show bas. Like for example, in the visualizer activity, you should replace this string literal with our new resource. What this does is it allows me to reference the string resource inside the code, which foolproofs the code against sloppy typing. And it makes changes in the future a lot easier. Now for the default value, I'm still using this literal true. We can actually define Boolean constants the same way we define string constants. Let's create a new bools.xml file under the values resource folder. This file will be used to store constants that I can refer to later. So inside that XML file, I'll put a constant for whether the bas should be shown by default or not. I'll go to our preference visualizer and change that default value, replace it with the bool resource, and then in the visualizer activity also replace this hard-coded true with the resource we just created. And then finally, I'll just run the code to make sure there weren't any regressions.